Also es gibt auf jeden Fall noch viele, viele Räume, wo es so richtig krasse Sachen zu sehen gibt. Das will man sich auch gar nicht ausmalen, ne? Wenn du dir da irgendwie ein Bein brichst oder so. Und 11 Jahre später wurde sein Körper gefunden. Moin Leute, grüße euch. Herzlich willkommen zu einem weiteren Stream-Highlight auf meinem Kanal. Wir haben uns letztens im Livestream ein paar Katakomben-Videos angeguckt, Found-Footage-Videos und ein Video, wo jemand ausgeraubt wurde. Wenn ihr das noch nicht gesehen habt, checkt das auf jeden Fall aus. Und ich habe jetzt noch 2 weitere Videos hier. Und das eine, damit fangen wir jetzt an, heißt They crossed the gate to hell. Sie haben das Tor zur Hölle überquert. Paris Catacombs. Let's go.
What is this all about? Is there such a thing on earth as the gate into hell? Suffice it to say, if there was, then the Paris Catacombs would qualify as such a place. Moreover, on visiting it, you may get that impression. This is because it looks more like a dungeon full of skulls, although the story behind it is not what you think.
Da sind gerade viele Aufnahmen aus dem offiziellen Teil der Katakomben.
But you are allowed to think the worst and imagine that it's the creepiest place on earth. And we're certainly with you on that one. So between its reputation as the gate into hell and the heap of human bones kept there, let's see if your imagination is close enough to the real deal. The Catacombs of Paris, as the name may suggest, are underground burial places right smack in the vicinity of Paris, France. So the next time you visit Paris and mount the Eiffel Tower, know that beneath your feet is arguably the creepiest place on earth. The catacombs hold the remains of over 6 million people. These catacombs are located in a network of tunnels that were originally used as stone.
Also diesen offiziellen Teil würde ich mir auch gerne irgendwann nochmal angucken, ne? Weil da sind die Knochen halt so richtig krass dekorativ angeordnet.
The catacombs start from a former city gate called the Barrière d'Enfer, which is translated as Gate of Hell. And then they go southward. And spoiler alert, that's where its otherworldly nickname comes from. The tombs were created to solve the problem of overflowing cemeteries in the city. The work to prepare the catacombs.
Okay, das ist jetzt einfach nochmal diese Geschichte der Katakomben, ne? Aber auch nochmal sehr interessant, das nochmal zu hören.
Began after a series of basement wall collapses happened around the Holy Innocents Cemetery in 1774. This made it urgent to find a solution for the crowded cemeteries. Starting in 1786, remains from most of Paris's cemeteries were moved to a mine shaft near the Rue de la Tombe Issoire, using covered wagons.
Warte mal. Rue de la Tombe Issoire oder so hieß das gerade, ne? Das war ziemlich da, wo wir letztes Jahr reingegangen sind.
To a mine shaft near
ich kann mich nämlich noch... ein Minenschacht. Also da war eine große Mine oberhalb der Erdoberfläche, wo es dann halt auch in diese Tunnelsysteme reinging. Und ich kann mich noch dran erinnern, weil es ist auf jeden Fall, habe ich das auch gefilmt. Unten in den Katakomben sind immer so die Namen der Straßen, die oben drüber sind, auf so Steinen eingraviert. Und ich kann mich noch dran erinnern, dass da auch auf so einem Stein drauf stand Rue de la Tombe Issoire.
Tombe Issoire, using covered wagons during the night. Apparently, the movers of the remains couldn't go and come as they pleased, except under the cover of night. Speaking of which, when you go to the catacombs, there's a sign above that says, "Stop. This is the Empire of Death." People in Paris, especially those who were well off, were curious about the catacombs from the beginning. One of the first visitors was the Count of Artois in 1787. At first, only a few people were allowed to visit each year with permission from a mine inspector. But later, more visitors were allowed, and any mine overseer could give permission. In 1833, the catacombs were completely closed because the church didn't want human remains on display, or more like holy smoke. At some point in the intervening years, the authorities started allowing visits every day. Again, in September 2009, the catacombs were closed because someone vandalized them, but they reopened on December 19 of the same year. The catacombs were also closed to the public during the COVID-19 pandemic, but reopened on June 16, 2020, with new rules and guidelines. And trust us when we say that these rules and partial closures are there for a reason, because a few notable incidents have happened, and here's why. Deep under the streets of Paris, the catacombs look like the pit of hell. These bones are stored in a vast network of tunnels that stretch for miles beneath the ground. As mentioned, the catacombs were created in the 17th century to solve the problem of too many people dying in the busy city of Paris. So the officials dug up a lot of the bodies and put them in the old stone mines under the city. For many years, the bones were just scattered around, but in the early 1800s, they were arranged in fancy patterns during renovations. There's a small section of the catacombs that tourists can visit, which is nicely decorated. However, there are many more tunnels that are off-limits and very dangerous. Some explorers who ventured into those forbidden areas got lost, confused, and even died in the dark depths of the catacombs.
Boah, ey. Das will man sich auch gar nicht ausmalen, ne? Wenn du dir da irgendwie ein Bein brichst oder so. Ich meine, wir sind echt genug Leute und wir sind nie alleine. Aber wer weiß, was passieren kann, ne? Stell dir mal vor, dir fällt einfach so ein fetter Stein auf den Kopf. Ich glaube, ich werde mir noch einen Helm besorgen.
People say the catacombs are one of the scariest places in the world, and they believe that the gates of hell are hidden somewhere down there. You'd remember, we mentioned how that designation came about. But could it really be pointing to something real? It might very well be that there are more than just ghosts haunting that place. In 2010, an explorer went missing in the catacombs, and his final moments were recorded on a video camera.
Okay, da reden die auch nochmal von dem Video, was wir eben geguckt haben. Das war 2010 wohl erst. Dafür sind die Aufnahmen aber sehr, sehr schlecht. Ich glaube immer noch, das ist fake. Aber der soll da wohl alleine unterwegs gewesen sein und verschwunden sein, ja.
The footage shows him exploring and then getting scared by something. He drops the camera and runs away into the darkness. The camera kept rolling until its battery died, and another explorer found it later. Some people doubt if the footage is real,
Ja,
but some think that maybe the man went crazy and crossed into the gates of hell. If so, then those on the other side can also come through to us, like this. One of the most famous ghosts in the catacombs is said to protect a group called the Cataphiles. These are people who explore the forbidden parts of the catacombs. The ghost was originally a doorman at a local hospital. One night, he went into the catacombs through an entrance in the hospital. Some say he was looking for hidden alcohol. Unfortunately, he got lost, and his candle went out. He died down there.
Scheiße.
11 years later, his body was found. And they identified.
Was? Da ist irgendwer durch einen geheimen Eingang, durch irgendein Krankenhaus rein und hat wohl nach irgendwelchen Alkohollagern gesucht. Und 11 Jahre später wurde sein Körper gefunden. Boah, ich krieg grad Gänsehaut, ne? Am ganzen Körper, ey.
Identified him by the keys he had from the hospital. His body is still in the Paris catacombs, along with his ghost. People say he wanders around, whispering in people's ears and blowing out their candles. And there's more. Many believe that other spirits wander in these tunnels too. They think these spirits were moved from their original resting places. Some people even claim that dark rituals have taken place in the deep parts of the Paris catacombs. Would you be brave enough to visit this famously haunted place? Even the tourist section of the catacombs is like a maze, and that's just a small part compared to the 200 kilometers of chambers that are believed to exist under Paris. And some of these tunnels are off limits. Perhaps that is where the entrance to hell can be uncovered. But here's a little tour of ours on your behalf. Right before we jump into the last part, if you made it this far,
Da waren wir auch, der Knochenthron. Da ist er.
So you enter the first section of the catacombs, where chambers filled with bones come into view.
Ja, aber das ist ja der offizielle Teil.
There are stacks of bones piled up in an orderly manner, stretching far back. The ends of the bones are visible, and the space is decorated with neatly arranged skulls. It's important to note that these are actual human bones, which adds to the intrigue. The sight is quite fascinating. especially observing the row of skulls. Their conditions vary, with some in better shape than others. In some instances, the skulls are completely cracked open, revealing the thickness of the skull and the fused skull plates. A few skulls still have their full jaws intact, but the majority show signs of deterioration, with cracks and damage. There is a barred-off section that catches your attention. Interestingly, a part of the wall, constructed entirely of human bones, has crumbled, causing the bones to spill out onto the floor below. As you continue your walk, various skull designs catch your attention. Some skulls are arranged in love hearts, crosses, or simply lined up, while others are noticeably missing. Certain parts of the catacombs are quite dark. Although there is sufficient lighting, you must realize that if the lights were to go out, it would become pitch black. The presence of water dripping through the ceiling creates small stalactite formations, adding to the eerie and damp atmosphere. There is a moss-covered skull that stands out in this particular section, resembling a freestanding pillar that extends all the way to the ceiling. The rows of skulls and bones continue, with more skulls reaching up to the low ceiling. The cramped space requires that you be cautious, and the ceiling is so low that your head might touch it if you're standing straight. Now you can look in the opposite direction, and you'll observe the vast number of bones stretching far into the distance, leading to unexplored chambers beyond. In short, you're deep underground in the streets of Paris. Unfortunately, as you walk, you can't help but notice that some disrespectful individuals have defaced the skulls with graffiti.
Echt, ne? Das haben wir halt auch gesehen, wo wir da waren letztes Jahr, dass ganz viele Knochen irgendwie mit Edding und so angemalt sind, da irgendwelche Namen drauf geschrieben sind und so. Ja, also es ist ja schon einerseits respektlos, finde ich, so ein bisschen über diese Knochen drüber zu kriechen und so weiter, aber dann noch irgendwie da drauf rumzuschmieren, das muss halt überhaupt nicht sein, ne? Das ist richtig ehrenlos.
Which is greatly disappointing. Then you stumble upon a secluded spot and decide to explore a little further. The tourist section you are standing in is just a small part of the...
Da waren wir auch. Das sind diese Räume, wo diese Statue ist, das nennt sich La Plage. Und das wird da sein, wo wir übernachten werden, in diesem Bereich.
Extensive catacombs. And there are in fact cataphiles, or explorers, who venture into uncharted areas and document their findings for the benefit of others. You'd agree that those cataphile guys must have nerves of steel. But really, what do you suppose lies beyond the tourist section? The tour has suddenly come to an end.
Mega interessant. Krass. Hat man nochmal so die ganze Geschichte gehört. Wir gehen gleich weiter ins nächste Video. Top 10 Terrifying...
It's said that the Paris catacombs hold the remains of more than 6 million people. That alone is creepy enough. But what makes it even more terrifying is the fact that it's also home to ghosts, active criminals, and secret societies.
Ja, okay.
If you want to learn about this and more, make sure to stick around for today's video. Starting off this countdown, we have the secret underground community. Believe it or not, but there is a group of urban explorers that like to hang out in the Paris catacombs. They call themselves the Cataphiles, and they sneak into the tunnels.
Also solche Leute haben wir ja auch getroffen, sieht man ja auch in meinem Video. Ganz entspannte Leute. Der eine, den wir da getroffen hatten, der hat sogar gesagt, der war auch schon mal 3 Tage am Stück da unten. Also da sind halt echt viele Leute, die da wirklich regelmäßig abhängen und sich treffen, ne?
Evade the police and then go exploring. In fact, they have claimed a number of sections as their own, marking it with murals and graffiti. Not only that, but they have found secret ways to get into the catacombs. Plus, they've started mapping the whole place out so that other explorers don't get lost. Only problem is that this is a very dangerous hobby. Since they are entering restricted areas in the catacombs, they have to watch out for crumbling walls, falling rocks, even pools of water. I don't know about you, but I prefer to spend my time with the living and not the dead. In our 9th spot, we have the Lost Girl. In 2005, a group of teens illegally snuck into the catacombs on New Year's. Sadly, they all didn't make it out alive. They all were drinking and having a blast when one of their friends, Masha, wandered off alone. When they finally realized she had disappeared.
Ey, da waren Leute an Silvester, die waren betrunken und dann ist ein Mädel alleine losgezogen. Ey, Leute.
They went out looking for her but couldn't find her. No one knew what happened to her until 4 months later. That's when a group of boys were exploring the catacombs when they stumbled upon her frozen body.
Nein. Oh mein Gott. Ey. Aber warum gefroren? Wahrscheinlich nicht wirklich eingefroren, sondern einfach nur, weil sie halt tot war. Oh mein Gott.
Since she was drunk, she wandered off to another section of the catacombs and then got lost and froze to death. How heartbreaking.
Nein.
Coming in at number 8, we have Philibert Aspel. Philibert Aspel was a doorkeeper at the Val de Grace Hospital during the French Revolution. And the hotel actually had a staircase located in the courtyard that would lead to the catacombs. So one night in November of 1793, Philibert descended into the catacombs to retrieve a bottle of liquor stored down there. However,
Das war, was wir eben schon gehört haben, dass sich da jemand aus diesem Gebäude da runtergegangen ist, um da gelagerten Schnaps zu holen. Oder ist das jetzt eine andere Geschichte? Das hört sich so ähnlich an.
he only brought one candle with him and it was not enough to light the way. Eventually it blew out and he was down there in pitch black. Being semi-intoxicated, he stumbled around the catacombs lost. For 11 years, no one knew what happened to him. That was until 1804 when his body was found. He was identified by the hospital keyring hanging from his belt. Moving on, number 7, we have the Whispering Walls. A number of explorers have claimed that no one should ever be in the Paris catacombs after midnight.
Hey, krass, wir waren da ab nach Mitternacht, ne? Und ich weiß nicht, ob ihr euch vielleicht erinnert, in unserem Video, Leon und Robin und so, die waren der Meinung, die haben eine Mädchenstimme flüstern hören, ne? Vielleicht war das.
For if you are, then the walls will begin to speak. People have claimed to have heard disembodied voices coming from the catacombs.
Ja, man hat auch sowieso ständig das Gefühl, hinter einem spricht jemand, wenn man durch dieses Wasser läuft, weil das immer so schallt, und auch wenn man sich unterhält, dann hallt diese Stimme so zurück und man hört halt immer wieder seine eigenen Wörter. Boah, das ist so unheimlich.
These voices confuse them and try to persuade them to travel deeper and deeper into the catacombs until you're in too far that you're lost and you can't escape. Actually, fun fact, they use this as inspiration for the movie As Above, So Below, which takes place in the Paris catacombs. In our 6th spot today, we have the camera system. In 2004, a group of French police explored some of the restricted areas of the Paris catacombs.
Das hat mir, glaube ich, Leon letztes Jahr erzählt, dass da Polizisten runtergegangen sind. Also es gibt halt gab es mal so Catacops, also Polizisten, die für die Katakomben zuständig waren oder sind, und die sind da wohl in einen Bereich gekommen, wo überall Kameras waren, und dann lag da wohl irgendwie ein Zettel oder sowas, oder stand ein Schild, wo drauf stand, wir beobachten euch, geht lieber nicht weiter oder so. Also ich könnte mir vorstellen, dass das jetzt die Story ist.
And that's when they discovered something truly terrifying. First, they found a PA system that when triggered would play sounds of guard dogs barking. Then they found a full-on bar, living area, workshop, lounge, and cinema with...
Krass, Alter, die haben da wirklich so richtige Wohnbereiche gefunden, mit einem Kino drinne. Was?
Space to fit 20 people. Like what? Not only that, but whoever created this little home setup was stealing other people's electricity from above. The creepiest part is that they had a full-on security camera set up, and the police soon realized that they were being watched. They left to get a bigger team to further investigate the area, but by the time they got back, everything was gone.
Krass, ey, dann sind die Polizei mit einem riesigen Team zurückgekehrt, und als sie wieder da waren, war das alles weg. Alter, ey, was da abgeht, ne?
The only thing left was a note that read, "Don't search." We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Decoeul. Decoeul is the name of a very mysterious man. We don't know much about him, but we do know that he was a veteran of the French army, and he was also an artist.
Oh, das würde ich auch gerne sehen, ne? Das habe ich auch schon öfter Fotos von gesehen. Also es gibt auf jeden Fall noch viele, viele Räume, wo es so richtig krasse Sachen zu sehen gibt. Und ich habe mir auch viele Sachen auf der Karte markiert. Und ich hoffe, das sehen wir auch noch. Ich glaube, ja, genau. Ich habe das mir markiert. Das ist der Castle Room, also der Schlossraum. Ja.
In fact, he created a number of sculptures for the catacombs. However, this eventually led to his death. During the construction of one of his sculptures, a part of it fell and crushed him completely. It's said that to this day, his soul wanders the catacombs. In fact, people have seen him down there before. In our fourth spot today, we have the Crypt of Passions. The Crypt of Passions, located in the ossuary, is a pillar that is covered in skulls to the point that it's just completely concealed. The skulls end up forming what looks like a barrel, which is creepy for a number of reasons. Just take in, those are real skulls. You're surrounded by people who used to be living, and most of them died in tragic ways, and then their bones were used for an art display. A number of people who have visited this area in the catacombs have reported feeling very uneasy around the Crypt of Passion. It's believed that some of the souls that were placed there have not found peace. I mean, in some cultures, they believe that a proper burial must be done with a tomb marker, or else the soul will never be able to rest or go to the afterlife. However, that was not possible at the time. The catacombs were built because grave overcrowding was a serious issue back then, among other things. In our third spot today, we have the scratch marks. There's this really creepy area in the Paris catacombs where it's just a wall of scratches. Like, it looks as if bodies rose from the dead and tried to scratch their way out. It's a creepy touch to the place, that's for sure. Moving on to number 2, we have the Lost Tape. Now, I'm sure all of you...
Das, was wir auch schon uns angeguckt haben, ne? Das kommt jetzt bestimmt. Dieses Found-Footage-Material.
Have heard about this urban legend before, and in fact it also inspired the movie As Above, So Below. And it might not even be a legend, it might be real, but to this day no one knows. Once upon a time in 1990, a weird dusty camcorder was discovered in the catacombs. The camera appeared to have been there for quite some time, so they decided to inspect it. What was found on it was very disturbing. The video was of an unidentified male explorer wandering around the catacombs. While down there, we see him interacting with the skulls around him. But then something spooks the man and he ends up growing paranoid and panicked. At one point, he drops the camera and just runs away. Sadly, he never made it out alive. This tape contains the final moments of his life. And in our number 1 spot today, we have The Criminals. In 2017,
Jetzt kommt's, ey.
It was discovered that a group of robbers used the catacombs to break into an apartment. Basically, they figured out that the catacombs were right under an apartment vault. So they drilled their way in through
Was, ey? Die sind echt durch die Katakomben in irgendwelche Apartments eingebrochen, haben sich da nach oben durchgebohrt. Was?
the limestone and entered the apartment to steal over 300 bottles of vintage wine. In total, they valued at close to 250,000 euros. Isn't that insane? Alright guys, that's all for today's video. If you want to see part 2, then let me know in the comments below. And speaking of comments, let's move on to our comment shoutout portion. I'll be shouting out comments from the video, top 10 dark crossbreeding experience.
Da wird jetzt noch 3 Minuten lang nur gelabert. Das macht doch niemand. Alter, 7,8 Millionen Abonnenten. Tschüss. Ey Leute, ich danke euch für diesen Stream. Mir ist richtig heiß, ich schwitze die ganze Zeit von diesem komischen Chip immer noch. Meinem Bauch geht's aber ganz okay. Ich trinke jetzt nochmal ordentlich Wasser. Ich danke euch, dass ihr alle dabei wart. Ich werde mich jetzt mal ins Bettchen hauen. Und hoffen, dass ich nicht... beziehungsweise ich hoffe, dass ich heute Nacht oder morgen früh das alles rauslassen kann von diesem scharfen Chip, damit ich morgen nicht bei meinem Date irgendwie auf dem Klo hänge. Das wäre richtig peinlich. Schlaft gut. Wir sehen uns im nächsten Video zum nächsten Livestream. War mir eine Freude. Bye, bye, bye. Ciao, ciao. Gute Nacht zusammen.